Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to the channel. On today's episode, we're going to talk about this brand new Makita XGT 40 volt 7¼ inch circular saw with the track compatible base. All right, stay tuned. All right, you guys, so this right here is the brand new Makita GSH02 is the model number. And it is their Sidewinder type circular saw with this track compatible base. This base is a magnesium like die cast. If you get one without the base, it will be model number GSH01, okay? But the GSH02 means you get this track compatible base, fits on their track system, all right? So this is in their 40 volt XGT lineup. If it looks familiar, because they kind of make another one, or in their 18 volt LXT lineup. I believe the model number is XSH08, I think, or something like that. If I get it wrong, we'll throw it up in the screen. But that one is in their 18 volt or 36 volt lineup using 18 volt X2 batteries. So this one is pretty much almost an exact replica of that, except it runs on their 40 volt system. But let's talk a little bit about the XGT lineup or whatnot before we really get into it. So if you haven't watched it already, there's another video. I was talking to one of the VP of sales of Makita that I kind of ran into at the depot and kind of going over like details about it and one of the reasons why the XGT lineup exists, right? So the XGT lineup was not necessarily created to go ahead and replace all the tools in their 18 volt lineup, right? I mean, that wouldn't make too much sense since they already do the 18 volt X2 anyways, right? But they made the XGT lineup to kind of make cordless some of the power tools that aren't cordless now, right? Like some of their maybe like diamond cutting saws or SDS Maxes and things like that, right? But if you are going to create a battery platform for that, you don't want to have the users to go and buy two different battery platforms because you don't want to buy their 80 or 60 or 40 volt XGT lineup batteries and then go buy their LXT batteries to use a circular saw, drill, recips, impact, or whatnot, right? So they are releasing more and more tools every quarter that they already have kind of in that XGT lineup, and they'll probably create more tools in the XGT lineup that won't exist in the 18 volt lineup, mainly because you can't necessarily meet that demand for power and performance with 18 volt systems, all right? So anyways, the reason I'm saying that is because this is very similar to the tool that they have now, and a lot of people are going to say, well, what's the real difference? Why is it better or more efficient or whatnot? Anyways, so one thing to just talk about in general performance detail is with everything being even, the higher the voltage, the more efficient you can get with it, right? So it's a 40 volt system, but it's really an 18 volt X2 type system, right? So it's very pretty much similar to their XSH08. Anyways, so with that being said, let's go ahead and get into marketing details, and then we'll really bring you in closer and talk more about it. It's in their XGT lineup, has a blade diameter of 7¼ inch, obviously, arbor of 5/8, max cutting capacity at 90 degrees, 2 3/8 of an inch, max cutting capacity at 45 degrees to 1 11/16 of an inch, max cutting capacity at 48 degrees is 1 5/8 of an inch. It has a no load speed of 6,000 RPMs, and its overall length is just over 13 inches, like 13¼ And with a battery, it will weigh in at around 10.4 pounds, okay? It does have AWS capabilities. You do have to buy the AWS chips in order for it to work with it, but it does have that capability there if you did want to use the automatic wireless start system, right? Okay, it does have positive stops at 22.5 and 45 degrees. It maximum bevel capacity up to 56 degrees. It has a LED light, has an electric brake, and it comes with a 3-year limited warranty. Okay, so one of the other things that Makita did was they kind of made the XGT lineup work with only XGT batteries, right? So it's going to be hard or difficult, if not impossible, to get a XGT battery that's aftermarket or third party. I think one of the things that they really saw with that was the tool performance are really suffering with those non-genuine Makita batteries, mainly because, you know, sometimes if you buy some of the cheaper stuff you see on Amazon that comes out of some place not around here, and you plug it into a tool, it generally doesn't seem to work as well, or the battery life is a lot less or whatnot. Anyways, with that being said, let's bring you in closer and we'll talk more about this tool. All right. All right, you guys, so we're up close. All right, so here is the GSH02 up close. It's got this like die-cast magnesium base, pretty standard on most of the Makita stuff that you see. It does seem to me that the XGT stuff seems to have like a darker grayish color to it. Okay, we'll bring up some of the XSR or the 36 volt system stuff and you'll kind of get an idea. So it's a little darker bit gray. That's one of the first things you notice. Pretty standard blade guard on here, and it does bevel. If you look up here, if you don't include the positive stops, it will bevel, right, all the way to right there, right? But one of the things that Makita does really well, that I really like in their saws, and hopefully some of you guys do, is right here they have like positive stop systems, right? So if you drop this here, right, it will bevel right up to 45. That way you don't necessarily have to guess, thinking, okay, well, let me move it here, 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 here. I think this is 45, you know, I kind of got it lined up, and depending on what angle you may be looking at, you may get it wrong or whatnot. But this positive stop system here at 45 makes it really, really nice, okay? So this right here, this little switch lever thing you can press right here, will make a hard stop when it does bevel. So if you do need to make a lot of 45-degree cuts, you can easily just flip it over, set it, lock it in, and then go. So that actually is really nice, okay? On the back side here, where a lot of the stuff actually happens, the blade wrench is kept right here. It is an Allen wrench. One thing I wish they did do was, because the arbor it has the bolt on it is a nut or a bolt or whatnot. I wish they kind of gave you the wrench instead of the Allen key whatnot. I do wish they did that, kind of like they do on their worm drive type saws, right? So I do wish they did that. The blade stop or the blade lock or spindle lock is right here. So it's kind of easy to change the blade. If you've changed Makita blades, it's pretty standard, nothing too special or anything like that. It does also have a dust chute right here. It doesn't come with it installed. You kind of slide it in, then put like one Phillips screw on it to really lock it in, but it does really help with that. It is really nice to see that Makita does include the dust chute attachment by default in their tools, right? So tool only, you will still get this. It doesn't always come on a lot of everyone else's tools. Like for instance, the DeWalt worm drive type saw, you had to go buy that attachment separately, and a whole bunch of other stuff, you have to go buy that stuff separately. But on the Makita stuff, it does come in by default, all right? Nothing too interesting or too much going on different. Like I said, if you use a lot of Makita stuff, you'll see that it is pretty standard. It is very much like a track saw in terms of the base works very similar to a track saw. So these knobs here will help you really tighten the slack in the rail once you just put it in the rail, mainly because by turning the knob, a little green slider or a teal slider will pop out of here, making it more tight tolerances, okay? So there's two of those knobs right here, one on the front and one on the back. And this little lever button right here will lock the saw into the track so that it doesn't come off or fall off, all right? It's really useful, or really used mainly when you're making like 45 or bevel cuts. That way the saw doesn't like lift up or fall off or anything like that, but it is there, and that is nice, okay? So here obviously is where you would insert the battery. Nothing too special there. It does have the same vibration dampening, like gel type things that you see on almost all Makita tools. So that is there, nice by default, okay? Here is the depth adjustment, pretty standard as you see in almost all Makita saws. You slide it up, adjust to where you want to cut it, lock it down, nothing too tricky, okay? All right, so obviously this is not the blade that comes with. The blade that comes is a Makita max efficiency blade. We put this blade on here mainly to do testing and stuff with the standard blade that we use in pretty much all the saws, so we kind of have a really good idea of what's really happening there, okay? On the back side, we have where your AWS chip would go if you did want to use it. You put it in there, close it, lock it in, and instructions on how to set it up with your vacuum and AWS stuff really come with it. So that right there is really nice. This safety lock thing is pretty much ambidextrous, as you would see in their other saw. Nothing too standard. And speaking of the other saw, we'll bring that up in just a second, okay? It does have a guide rail type system. If you did have like a rip cut guide that you want to slide in here, you could slide it in right here, and then you could just lock it down right here. And this thing will not allow it to I mean, will not allow it to slide once you slide it in and lock it down. You can literally just use it for ripping something really nice. All right, so this right here is the Makita track. This does not come with the tool. You do have to buy this separately. I mainly have this because I use the Makita 36-volt track saw, okay? So this right here is not necessarily a track saw, but it is a track compatible saw. It does, in a way, you can kind of get most of the benefits of the track saw by buying this, and you can also use this more in a construction type environment on a job site type deal. I mean, you don't necessarily have to worry about it getting damaged as easily as the track saw, although the track saw is pretty much just as rugged too, so not too much to worry about there. One of the things that people are going to say is that you don't get the plunge cutting capability. Well, that is not necessarily true. I mean, it is obviously not as nice as plunging in with the track saw, but if you do keep the depth adjustment open, right, like unlocked here, and you bring this safety guard up here, right, what you can do in a way is you can leave it and start like this and then do a plunge cut like so, and then go. All right, you cannot, one thing you cannot do though, with like you can do in a track saw, is predeterminedly set a track depth or a cut depth and then go, mainly because the depth cut locking mechanism is a lever back here, and you cannot go ahead and set that, okay? So anyways, like we said, here is the track system, and once you put it on there, it does slide pretty easily, just like almost any other Makita, just like the Makita track saw. Let me flip it around for you so you guys can really see some of the buttons and details that we're talking about. Here it is on the back side of the track. So this button right here will actually reduce the slack. If you turn this knob here, let's loosen it up a little bit. And what you do is if you loosen it up, see, there's a lot more slack, okay? You can tighten it up just a little bit to reduce the slack that's in there, right? But don't tighten it too much because it will affect how easily it slides, because what is really happening is it's really tightening against this beveled edge here, okay? So if you tighten it too much, it will reduce how easily it slides. So make sure you keep that in mind, okay? So the other thing you can do is right now, for instance, if I just lift this up this way, let's say I was making a beveled cut, right? So most of the weight is going to be leaning over this way. So let's see if we can do that real quick. If we level this backwards this way, right? And if you're trying to go or slide or whatnot, the saw, if you're not too careful, will automatically slide off like this, right? So that's bad. You don't want that to happen. You could get injured and you just mess up the cut and all that fun stuff. So what they do have here is this little lever that you can slide over, and it locks that, like a washer on the bottom comes out and locks it to the track such that it won't come off the track. The entire saw or the entire track can lift up, but if you're using like clamps and stuff, you don't have to worry about that. So this is actually really nice. It works very similar to their track saw, and we can talk about that in a second, all right? So let's bring that back over, easily slide this back. So this right here is the Makita 36-volt 18-volt X2 track saw that we've been using pretty much forever, and it's the model number XPS01, okay? And it's got all the same features. Like if you look at the back side of it here, let's make the bevel come up here. So if we look at the back side of this track saw, it looks almost exactly the same. It's got the same knobs, same slider switch to lock it into place. And on this one, it also does, on the track saw, you do have a guide rail rip cut guide that you can fit on both the front and the back, but on the GSH02 you only have that for the front, okay? But the track saw is generally more tuned or used for like real woodworking type situations where you really need to get really precise, really clean cuts or whatnot. This saw is mainly going to be for like job site use, but you can obviously try to get as much as you can from that saw. So other differences you will see with this is that on the track saw, let me bring it out of here. On the track saw, there is a variable speed that you can really lock in how slow or fast you want it to cut. Got a little button there to tell really how much battery is left on that. But on the track saw, you can also predeterminedly set the depth at which you want to cut. Like for instance, if I wanted to make sure I only doing it backwards is kind of ridiculous. If I wanted to make sure it only plunges to a certain amount, I can go ahead and set this here, right? And then if I plunge it, it will stop right there, right? So this track saw normal state, because it's spring loaded, will rest in an up state, whereas the GSH02 will rest in a down state because it's not a spring loaded depth cutting system, okay? Both of it does, this track saw also have this, but we're not really here to talk about this track saw. I just wanted to give you some similarities and differences, but like I said, mostly it's mostly similar, except this track saw will take a 6.5 inch blade, and the GSH02 will take a 7.25 inch standard framing blade. You could put a finished blade on there if you want, but is a 7.5 inch blade versus a 7.25 inch versus 6.5. Okay, so that's what you really get with this. Okay, so this one right here on the left is the XGT GSH02. This one right here on my right, or your left, is Makita's XSH06. So these saws are very similar. I don't actually have the XSH08, but it's pretty much exactly the same saw as the XSH06, except the XSH08 has the track compatible base. Okay, so as you can see here, when you bring them really close up, the XGT tool seems to have a little darker gray shade. The LXT has a little lighter shade of gray. They both have the same type of dust chute. It's got pretty much the same beveling quick stop capabilities, although the quick stop bevel capabilities are a little bit different, or the buttons and knobs are a little bit different on the 18-volt LXT system. But it is also there too. So instead of a knob like you have on the GSH or XGT tool, for like a bevel type cut, you do have a lever here. That is one thing of difference. Also, what is similar is the rip guide will also only fit on the front of these two saws. Okay. So I mean, if you look at it, it's pretty similar. The depth guide is the same. Backside, you will see it's also very similar. With the battery in, and you can get a little bit of LED light action here, but there is an LED right here that does light up to really kind of see your line of sight, or kind of clear it up so you can kind of see it in the dark, but it's nothing too spectacular or anything like that. Let's go ahead and make some cuts. All right, you guys, so now it's time to get to the part that everyone's been waiting for. How is the performance, okay? So in order to test the performance, we're gonna put it through our track, and what that really means is we're going to rip a yellow pine, 4 feet of it, 3 times with each battery, and when we switched over to a newer battery, we're gonna change it to a brand new blade, okay? So without further ado, here we go. All right, you guys, so that was actually a lot more sawdust than I expected, especially with a dust collection system hooked up. But anyways, let's get to the numbers. So with a 2.5 amp hour battery running at 3 times the brand new blade, we came out to 15.3 seconds, okay? All right, so with a brand new blade and a 4 amp hour battery, we ran it 3 times and the average comes out to about 10.6 seconds, okay? So the difference between the battery, it actually does make a difference. Obviously, more amp hours, more current and things you could draw. And a circular saw is a high draw device, okay? So a higher capacity battery, I'm assuming if they make a higher capacity battery sometime in the near future, you could always test that again too. But the 4 amp hour battery running at 3 times, 10.6 seconds, that right now is our current leader on the board. It's only the one on the board, so it's really the only leader. So anyways, this right here is the XGT GSH02. It's a pretty great saw. You could use it as a standard sidewinder type saw. It has track compatibilities. You are going to pay a little bit more for the GSH02 versus the GSH01. So if you don't need the track compatibilities, then you could probably save a few bucks and get the GSH01. But if I were you, I would just pay just a little bit more and get the GSH02, mainly because it is track compatible, and it's really nice to have those track compatibility, especially when you're trying to cut like a straight line of something, right? Let's just say, for instance, you lay a bunch of deck boards out, right? So you don't like cut them all before you install it perfectly, because even if you measure and cut it, it's still going to be off by like a few millimeters here and there, right? So it's really just best to just lay all of them after you lay them, put the track there and just cut it straight, smooth line, nothing like that, right? So if you do any kind of work like that, or if you want to lay like some chevron patterns or whatnot and just cut it all to make it look clean, that's probably something you would do with this saw, right? So this saw really helps bridge the gap between like a full-blown track saw and a standard like workhorse circular saw, but this is in the sidewinder type format. If you can deal with that, that's good for you. Personally, I prefer the rear handle worm drive type saws. So anyways, like I said, hope this video has helped you guys out, and we'll see you guys next time.